Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fourth, where are we at? The fifth webinar, Helen, in the series. It's great to have you all along. We've got a really big one today. I think we've got over 400 registrations, so we'll see how many actually turn up, but we're very excited to talk today. And we've got a great lineup with Paul from Verpact, we've got Carl from APCO, and of course we've got Barry from SBSA and Helen from One Planet Consulting. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Barry to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, thanks, Oscar, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon, and especially for Paul for joining us at what is about 6:30 a.m. I believe in Europe. So on behalf of SBSA, the New Zealand Packaging Forum, APCO, Australian Institute of Packaging, and One Planet Consulting, I'd like to welcome you formally to the session this afternoon. As Oscar's alluded to, today we'll hear from Verpact. And Verpact is known as one of the leading products producer responsibility organisations in Europe, and we've learned a lot from them over probably the last 5-6 years. So we just want to share that today. We'll also hear from Carl from APCO with the learnings from their recent industry consultation. So Carl will talk us through that. So let's just get the show on the road. I'll hand off to Helen Miller. So for those of you who don't know Helen's an advisor to SPSA. She's been working with us and providing us a raft of knowledge over the last probably 3-4 years. And again, big call out to our member companies. Without you, we couldn't be doing what we're doing. So big thank you. So I'll hand on to Helen. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barry. And indeed, absolutely great to see so many people here today. It's a testament, I guess, to people's knowledge and understanding and interest in extended producer responsibility. And indeed, it's wonderful to welcome Paul Christians, who I've now met a few times, especially my 6 months in Europe last year. The Netherlands were an outstanding host for me for much of my time overseas. I hope everyone can see the screen shifting, the images scripting. No, wrong one. There we go. Sorry, navigating too many things simultaneously. So why the Netherlands? Apart from the fact that it achieves extraordinary circularity with about 32% of its products, which they measure, it truly has extensive and impressive collaboration that's been going on for centuries, actually, between governments and industry. And they've established very effective PROs, and they really do pursue continuous improvement in circularity and low emissions. Verpact, as you'll hear today from Paul, was established actually more than 20 years ago, but they've been offering a very comprehensive service for all packaging formats in their country, and they're a very experienced team. That image there is of Hester Klein-Blankhorst, their CEO, who's a most practical and down-to-earth, but also politically savvy person I think I've ever met. It's a continuous evolution that they have also in their structure and the services they offer, which is a great example for us in Australia, and because they're intent on fixing and addressing market failures. So they address all packaging formats, the supply chains, the contracts, the processing, recyclability, and end markets. And I really do want to have a shout out to members of the embassy team here in Australia and overseas, and their wonderful consular staff, including Di Fortere, who gave me so much support while I was away. So let's start with the facts. And I appreciate that, there are some presidents who don't believe in we need the facts, but I don't think facts like this lie when they are so consistent over such an extended period of time. So the distinguishing feature about this illustration, it shows you that recycling of plastics is up near 60% for some of these countries, beyond the 50%, and the target for 2030 is 55%. And many of these European countries have very progressive aims and ambitions to get there. Australia, unfortunately, is lagging behind Hungary. Hungary introduced extended producer responsibility for packaging in 2023, which became live in 2025. So we can expect that this will shoot up fairly soon. Each year, these companies and PROs are moving forward. Every nation now in Europe has EPR, mandatory EPR, not voluntary. And indeed, this is something which is spreading around the world, from Brazil to Korea as well. Typically, structures and roles when you have a PRO and a regulator is that the relationship is one where the material actually moves. So you have a PRO that is like an orchestra conductor that ensures material moves around the system, and they work closely with the government through the regulator in pursuing and achieving government strategy and targets. There's a close working relationship here because there's a contractual arrangement and agreement, and the funding comes from the producers and the retailers towards this, which goes towards all these parts of the supply chain. In Australia, we don't have this system. We have a relationship where the consumer pays local council and the council pays the collector, and we have very little visibility on what happens beyond here. So we don't have currently a conductor for the system. We don't have a regulator. We have minimal connection, unfortunately, and we have fundamentally an uneconomic system that we struggle to fix. So it's not productive, it's not fair, it's not economic, and it really doesn't work. Whereas if you have both a national regulator and a PRO, the wheels set in motion. So that is what I call the product conductors that balance the system. In Europe, and pardon me for this being a somewhat complicated diagram, but you see the money then flows from the producers and the retailers for what the packaging they put on the market. That is then used to help pay for the collection, with a small proportion now coming from consumers. And the money is also paid in to fix various parts of the supply chain and provide national campaigns and education. So it's a highly productive, low waste, economical and equitable system. What we're going to focus on today is pretty much this part of the diagram. So the relationship between the producers, the PRO and the government regulators, and how they work to ensure the system moves forward. And moving on, the role and the relationship between here, the brands and the government targets. In previous sessions, you would have heard us present on the relationship between the PRO and the local councils and the collectors. And in subsequent sessions, we're going to have sessions featuring the relationship between especially the PRO and the regulator and the retailers. So in each of the webinars that we're hosting, we're featuring a different country and a different part of the relationships and the working relationships between them all. So that's it from me, and I'm really delighted to welcome now Paul. Paul, I met and we spent quite a good deal of time in bars over dinners in Europe last year. Extremely expert and hospitable. He has a role in a relationship. He's been at Verpact and its predecessors for almost since its inception. He knows and understands the industry exceedingly well and works very closely on the regulatory environment in his role as the international coordination and advisor. So, Paul, over to you. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And the light is very harsh. Otherwise, you would see me with a red face from the blushing from the words that you said about me, actually. So thank you very much for that. I try to do my best. That's what I can do. And let me shed some light on the Dutch EPR system and our relations also with the governments. And here you see indeed what we are doing. We are the conductors, as Helen said. We try to take care of all the packaging waste that is arising in the Netherlands. So we legally represent producers and importers of packed goods to meet their legal targets, because they have been given legal targets to collect and recycle their packaging waste. They can't do this themselves, so that's why they've established an organization like us. to do this for them. And we do report to the government upon the achievement of these targets. And this is not all that we do. We try to make the chain as effective and efficient as possible by stimulating packaging design, motivating consumers to sort better. So the better they sort, the better our result would be in the end. And to agree also with municipalities on having effective and efficient collection systems. And also we try to connect with sorters and recyclers to also enhance their results in order to recycle even more packaging. So it's both from the front side and the back side of the collection that we are trying to make the system work, because we think the better designed your packaging is, the better you can recycle it. But we need our citizens to join in and to sort. So let's go to the next slide, please. And then also the next, because this was a nice slide that I found from the 1970s or 80s, I think, how we developed until the organization that we are now. As you can see on the timeline, actually, I think it's already in 1912 when the first waste management movement was done with the incineration of some packaging waste or some general waste in the Netherlands. So we have quite some history in treating waste. You can see this from the 1970s, where we started to collect paper and glass already separately. And from then we have had some general milestones in packaging waste management that have shaped us in the later years. So bans and taxes on landfilling and incineration make us doing the most actually to get the packaging back, to get the waste back in general, and to make something out of it. So a secondary raw material that we can use again. So that's what we have been doing in the past. And much later you see that even within the EPR system, we have chipped in too with enhancing the separate collection. We have introduced a campaign for collecting plastic packaging. Now we are going into fee modulation to make the recyclable packaging cheaper than the non-recyclable packaging. And we even have our own Delta plan on plastics, and there's more about it later. What you can see is then in 91, European legislation kicked in, and how we dealt with that is having covenants. So we didn't have actual EPR. We had a light method, as we call it, where some of the companies voluntarily reported to the government what packaging they would be placing on the market. And based on this, there was a committee that was actually estimating the packaging waste on the market and the recycling, and hence then reporting to the government. This was not sufficient. In the early 2000s, European government mentioned to the Dutch government that something had to be done, and that's why in 2006 the system started with EPR. So we went from voluntary to obligatory, and then we had a call for tender for PROs to establish themselves. We had some competition in the beginning. But later we found out quite soon enough that the municipalities were not wanting to have this competition. So that's why one PRO was established. By that time, the name was Netvang, and that's the predecessor of Verpact nowadays. In the meantime, we even had a plastic packaging tax. And taxes might seem never good, but in this case, I would say that it was positive, as tax compliance is generally quite high in the Netherlands, and all the companies that had to report to the government for their taxes, they really did so. And from there, we got our statistics of packaging placed on the market, so with a very high quality. And we also got the money from the tax authorities in order to pay our costs. And what you can see then from 2012, the packaging tax was abolished. And since then, the organization is more or less like it is. We had some separate organizations which are now joined together in Verpact. I think we can go to the next slide, please. If it works.
Yep.
Yeah. What you can see of packaging placed on the market, and I made this arrow in the 2005 to 2007 area. We did some estimates of packaging placed in the market, voluntary based, not 100% coverage. What you could see actually when we got to the full coverage is that the packaging waste placed in the market went down. And the reason for that is that probably the companies that were already reporting had more than average weight of packaging placed in the market. There were some companies that placed glass on the market, which is relatively heavy. So when we then got, we made estimations for the other share that was not reporting into the system. And what you see then, if everybody is going to report, that the statistics get far more reliable, and there was a drop actually in packaging placed on the market, which is also good for your recycling result if the recycling stays the same, obviously. So I think it was very practical way to see that high compliance can lead to different statistics in a way. So the higher your share of compliant companies is, the better it would be, in my opinion. Next slide, please. And then also the next, so this is the organizational design of our organization. How do we do the things that we do? This has something to do with, let's say, the legal part. In Europe, I think also, but especially in the Netherlands, there is a word like service of general economic interest. As one organization, we have actually such a function of general economic interest, and that's why the Dutch legislation says that everyone has to comply with the contract that we have designed. So how it works is that there is a legal embedding in the Dutch Waste Management Act that says that if there is an EPR obligation, and if there is one organization who has the majority behind himself in order to fulfill these EPR obligations, then this organization might be declared legally binding. What you need to do for that, though, is to have this waste management fee plan, as it is translated literally. So it's an actual contract with the producers saying, well, I am this organization, and this and this and that is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to charge to you. This is what I'm going to do with the money, basically. So it needs to meet the minimum requirements for EPR that we have in the European Union. And maybe this is an advantage, something that you don't have. In Europe, we do have the European Union, who has set some general legislative rules that we need to abide by. So these are the minimum requirements that we do need to meet, and they, amongst others, they say on what we need to spend our money. So also on communication, also on litter prevention, and all these kind of things. And actually, we do need to prove that we have the majority of the companies behind us that have actually signed the contract. And there are various ways to do that. But in history, we've always demonstrated that we could do so, and that's why we can act as the majority in the Netherlands, and hence everyone has to join us and to pay to us the packaging waste management fees. The current period is ending next year, so we have to reapply. And to give you a hint, we are already working on that. So actually it's a time-taking process. It will last typically between 1 and 2 years to get this done. Next slide, please. Then the targets. The way they are established is partly coming from the legislator and partly coming from us. And this is maybe the part that Helen was referring to, us negotiating with the government. We do have some legislative targets, but we do see that they need to be feasible. So when they are not feasible, we will step up and we will just say, well, hey, this is not feasible. And currently, this is a topic of debate as the PPWR has kicked in with some targets, and the European Commission is saying, hey, countries, do not do gold plating, so not even more excessive targets, because this is not good for the internal market that we have. Although countries would like to set additional targets, and this is where we have to step in and say, well, this is not possible. And this is what we did in the past. We have a signaling function, and for instance, our glass recycling targets was very high at 90%, and it was so high that it was not feasible to reach. And we would get penalized year after year upon not meeting the targets. And this is when we say, this is not fair. You need to set us some realistic targets. And then we got into the negotiation with the governments, and then we ended up with the figure of 90, but then not just for recycling. It was a combined target for recycling and reuse of glass. And we were able to meet this with the reuse that we get from the beer industry in the Netherlands and the soft drinks industry. So we were finally able to meet these targets. So in the Netherlands, the government is always willing to see what is possible, and I think that's the good thing. Although in the recent past we see some politicization, as I call it, of EPR by especially NGOs who try to set up the government to make more ambitious targets. So here we have this tension again. And well, I don't have a crystal bulb or something like that, so I can't predict what's going to happen in this, but we will keep on saying what would be feasible and what not. Next slide, please.
Excellent, Paul. Excellent.
Yeah, thanks. Some of our key numbers. We have quite some high turnover, 500 million, which is a little bit less than 30 euros per person per year. Around 100 employees working on our EPR system, with around 7,000 companies registered, of which 2,600 report annually. And this is because fiscal entities, like holding companies who have more companies who do something in packaging, they can declare together as the fiscal entity. We do have a reporting threshold of 50,000 kilograms per year, which is very high and which is going to be reduced to zero when the PPWR rules kick in. We have a special department to work on recycling and recyclability. We do pay attention to the prevention of litter. And for plastic packaging, what is good to know is that the municipalities do the collection. They get a remuneration for this. And we handle everything that is post-consumer, so to say. Next slide, please.
Yeah. I suspect you're going to get quite a lot of questions on that.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I mean, I'm here anyway, so let's get the questions then. On recyclability and design for recycling, we have a special department that helps the producers with various things, like you can read it on the screen, various publications and e-learnings, but also some good instruments like recycle checks. So we actually determine what you need to assess to see if your packaging is recyclable or not. A sustainable packaging compass with which they can assess their recyclability online. A dashboard, sustainable packaging. This is an industry tool where they can, let's say, compare their packaging to industry averages. And well, we have also packaging disposal symbols. They will be replaced though, but we still have them. We were one of the first to have them actually. and some fact sheets that we give to the companies to be prepared as much as they can. Yeah, next slide, please. If it works, yes.
Yeah.
Then also some interesting components, I think, for you. How are our fees calculated? They're based on activity-based costing. So whatever it takes to collect and recycle the material, this is what is used into calculating the fee per material, which is then, of course, different for each of the materials. And that's no secret that plastics is the most expensive material that we have. We have actually two components, a fixed and a variable component. So the fixed component is the same for all packaging materials. It's basically including the overhead that we have, like building, salaries, etc. So these costs are divided by the weight of all the packaging placed on the market. Typically, it's 2 cents per kilogram, which is quite low. If you compare that with the variable component, this is all the waste management costs that we have divided by the packaging placed on the market per material. And now for plastics, we see that the thing you have to add on top of the 2 cents is €1.20 or even €1.30 per kilogram. So there you see how much the variable component is in the fee that we set. Although we have some bonuses for plastics, based on 5 criteria that have to do with recyclability and the use of post-consumer recycled material. So for each of the steps, they will get 10-cent discount, and even for one, they get 20 cents discount. So the maximum bonus that you can get is 60 cents per kilo, related to the €1.22 or €1.32, which is quite substantial. So we hope that the companies are using it, and the signs that we have is that they actually do. So the system works. Then I think we're going to talk what we do with the money on the next slide. Yeah. How this is organized. Well, usually the basis would be that there is a central cost allocation to the citizens in the Netherlands, where usually the people living in a municipality are taxed by the municipality, and there's a special tax earmark for the waste collection. This used to include the cost of packaging waste collection. But as we had EPR from 2006, the EPR budget is now spent for this. So the municipal waste taxes were substantially reduced because actually we were paying for the cost of packaging waste collection. This is, of course, the efficient cost. So it makes the more efficient companies maybe even gain some money on it. And the municipalities who have less efficient waste management collection in terms of cost, they would have to net pay a little bit. But that's the system that needs us. We need the system, we have to say, to get to an efficient waste management collection. So if we would say we would pay you all the cost, they would basically have golden containers to put in your packaging waste, which would then make us spend way too much money. So that's what we don't want to do. So we have made a system where the efficient ones get a bonus and the not so efficient one have to pay a little bit.
I'd be fascinated to know how long it took you to evolve to that, Paul.
Well, this was done quite early, maybe even before I joined Nedvang by that time. But generally, negotiations with municipalities take very, very long. And recently, we had to renew the contracts with the municipalities, and I think it took us almost 2 years to get to that. And even then, there's still need to fine-tune some of the arrangements that we have made. So this is a long-lasting process. Not to be negative, but it just takes a lot of time because, well, what we want is sometimes conflicting, and well, we should set the same goal for the both of us. And I would say that the same goal would be maximization of recycling. And if you have this as your goal and you have one ship and two captains, at least you go to the same direction and not trying to get to opposite directions. And if you do that, I think you will succeed in the end. And hopefully hopefully as quickly as possible. Yeah, I think we can go to the next one. I think we're getting ahead. Yeah, this is what I talked about actually. This is our fee modulation system. It's in Dutch, but nevertheless, I think you can see on the right side what the bonus could be if you do things very well. It's the use of recycled material, which gets you 20-cent bonus per kilogram. And then we have subsequent steps for monomaterial use, the use of the right color, or not use any color to be more precise, the size and the shape of the labels on packaging, and for compliance with the recycle check that we have, if you can prove that, you get another 10 cents bonus per kilogram, which is almost 50% of the fee that you have to pay. So in the end, I think it's quite a good system. Yeah, let's go further one slide. In the end, where does it bring us? These are the results for 2024. For 25, I think we are going to reveal them, a first reveal next month, but it's too early for that. What you can see in general is that the results are above the targets that we have been given. For plastics, it's 49% at the moment, but we do know that we need to get to 55% in 2030, which is quite, it's challenging to say the least. We need to have 10% more recycling at least, and that's quite a big gap. So we're doing the most in order to achieve that. And if we also calculate, that's on the right side, the combined results for recycling and reuse, you see that 88% in total is either recycled or reused in the Netherlands, which makes us actually quite proud. So I think it's going quite well. I think this is more or less it. I think the next slide is yeah, okay, it's something we need to work at. Yeah, that's true. We need to meet the legal targets, so we have to go on, and there are some factors that we have to take in. We further need to look at technology and innovation, but we have to deal also with the export ban for plastic waste to non-OECD countries. So this is a challenge, and we see that now at this point in time, the recyclers in Europe, they're not in a good position because there's a lot of imports coming from Asia, especially for recycled materials and virgin materials, which is a lot cheaper. And this makes us having to implement our Delta plan, and that's on the next slide. I think that's one of the final ones, where we try to make the system work. So we try to do to have the market work well. Now we see a disbalance in the market, and we want to bring it back. And we've joined together with brand owners who have made pledges to increase the use of PCR. And we support this with the fee modulation. So we're going to do something extra for PCR use. We try to innovate even more. And what we are going to do, and what we're actually doing now, is we do matchmaking with a circular plastic bank, which works that we are contacting recyclers and converters and brand owners. We try to bring them together, see what's the financial gap between using virgin material and recycled material, and then we negotiate on who is going to pay the difference. And in some cases, we are paying the difference because we want the companies to use it, the recycled material, and to be able to prove it. So actually they can start using it. And by this, we hope that the uptake of PCR is going to kickstart. So that's basically what we try to achieve with that. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the last slide was the thank you slide.
It
So
is.
yeah, there you go.
Barry, over to you. You're on mute.
If you can just go to the next slide, Helen. Thank you, Paul. Very interesting. We'll do a wrap up on that at the end. But I just want to introduce Carl from APCO. He's going to run through some information, the learnings from the recent consultation. Before we do, we just thought we'd announce that recently APCO and SPSA formed finalised a formal agreement between the two organisations. And I'll let Carl talk a bit about this in the learnings. But overall, where we see synergies of the two organisations working together, as we know, APCO has the sustainable packaging design guidelines. What SPSA brings to the party for that is we are contracting a supply chain. So you can have certainty, more confidence that your packaging that you've designed for recycling will be recycled. Also, in contracting the collection and the recycling, underpins your ARL, so de-risks any greenwash. So you can be certain that your labelling on your packaging matches the system that's recycling it. And APCO's capability in reporting and invoicing adds more robust scheme governance to SPSA. So there's all these synergies. We don't want to duplicate. APCO's there has got a lot of history and a lot of capability, and we're adding to that. So that's a basis of the formal agreement. So what does that mean for brands and retailers who are potential members of both entities? Firstly, no duplicate levies, no duplicate reporting. You've got data integrity around scheme data integrity. It's interesting, Paul, hearing about that. As soon as you apply a levy to data, you get much greater data integrity. You get much more or higher levels of confidence on the labelling, which de-risks any greenwash risks. Together, we're jointly advocating to government for what we're hearing today from Paul and other schemes. What we need in the country is good quality producer responsibility, as we're seeing in Europe. And then also we can jointly promote recycling to consumers. And at the end of the day, if you're talking to your CFO, what this also means is a broader membership that APCO has the reach for, helps us get closer to a level playing field, and that really has two impacts. One is the more people who join, either the levy reduces and/or we increase recycling. So it's a win-win really for industry, government, and community. So I'll hand off to Carl. So Carl's the head of partnerships, the head of product stewardship at APCO, and known Carl for many years. Background of Infrastructure Victoria, and he was very involved with establishing the container deposit scheme in Victoria. So welcome, Carl.
Can I also encourage people on the line to put any questions into the Q&A function? That would be great, because then we can do a rapid fire when we get to the questions in a few minutes' time. So thanks for that. Carl, over to you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Barry. So some very welcome news that Barry shared with you today regarding how APCO and SPSA are going to be working in collaboration together. So we'll soon share some more information with our APCO members as to what this means for you and what the opportunities are to get involved as we move forward to support, what we think is a really important initiative, the new soft plastic stewardship being led by SPSA. Hopefully there's no background noise, Helen. I am dialing in from the airport lounge, so please let me know if the bandwidth is a problem. But look, I really just wanted to take the opportunity to reflect upon the consultation that we went through as an organisation around March to May last year, and how we've responded with our business plan that was released in December at the end of the year. Look, firstly, also really just really great to hear the experiences coming out of the Netherlands and the journey they've been on. So many learnings for us to consider and investigate. So really, I think with that said, we are on a reform journey here in Australia ourselves, and we see some key shifts occurring for brand owners as we seek to support our members get ready for emerging regulation. So the first one is that, there is a clearer national direction on the horizon, and the regulation is consolidating. We believe that there's going to, under that new regulatory reform, a greater emphasis on the provision of proof, replacing promises. And so we're working with our members to strengthen what that looks like through things such as the ARL, through the development of an assurance program, etc. And then, of course, a key thing is that we need to get the economics right here so that the market settings matter. And in a moment, I'll talk about some of the
Carl, we've lost your audio. Carl, we've lost your audio.
Sorry, Helen.
Okay.
You were referring to Carl or to me?
Yeah.
To Carl.
So,
Yeah.
We've lost his audio. Oh, there he is. He's back again.
Can you hear me again?
Yes. Keep going.
I think Chris, who was just dialing in, somehow was calling me. I'm not sure what was going on there.
Right.
Apologies for that. So I'll whip through some of these.
Yep.
Packaging reform, it's on the move. We see the need for clear brand owner responsibility to meet the new national obligations. Stronger design standards are emerging, and recycled content expectations will increase. And there will be a greater emphasis on focus on addressing chemicals of concern and implementing improved practices for traceability and reporting. Flick to the next one, please, Helen.
Oh, hang on. There you go.
No, you're right.
Clicking on the wrong button.
Okay, so this is an example of some of the market-based settings that we need to get right. So late last year, we partnered with the Australian Council of Recyclers to commission an independent economic analysis by Rennie Advisory to look specifically at plastics and the recycling settings that are in place at the moment, and really to confirm what the urgency is around reform settings. So we know that a large share of packaging is still lost to the system and not being recovered and recycled, that the current settings alone, such as targets, don't fully address the system performance. And so we need to ensure that any reform is delivering the outcomes that are desired. And just some of the headline findings that we found through that report was that some of the challenges that will need to be worked through and addressed are the cost settings around domestic recycled content versus virgin recycled content, with a gap of 50% there. A lot of money has been invested into recycling infrastructure across the country, particularly for plastics, and we see that capacity not being fully utilised. So there is additional capacity if the material is presented to the market to draw upon. So we see an opportunity for improvement there. And a key part is that we've looked at some of the scenarios around extended producer responsibility, drawing upon examples from international jurisdictions, and then looking at some Australian settings. And what the modelling shows is that the reform can actually deliver some real improvements at little cost to products. So we looked at some typical shopping basket items, things like a 2-litre bottle of milk, a bag of bread, a tray of meat, and found that with eco-modulated fees, with some certain Australian settings of sort of low, medium, and high, you really were seeing an impact of less than 0.1% on the price of those product costs. So really, it's a great report. There's a link to the report in the slide deck that will be shared, and I encourage you to have a look at that. If we flick to the next one, please. Really, this is just a quick wrap up of the consultation that was undertaken last year. So we had a significant participation. No, you're right. We had a significant participation from our members across the country, with roadshow delivered across the country. And really, the key themes that we heard were that industry wants that certainty around the regulatory settings and a pathway that avoids duplication. a model that's practical and fair and actually reflects the sector realities, reporting that's efficient and not onerous, and ensure that the appropriate governance, insurance, and integrity settings are in place. So these are some of the things that we're sort of looking to move forward with. Where we're looking and advocating around what regulatory certainty looks like, partnering with the likes of SPSA to avoid things such as fee duplication is really important. We've got 5 key focus areas. I won't dwell on all of these given our time, but the key one that I wanted to draw attention to is the work that I'm involved in, which is around extended producer responsibility and soft plastic stewardship. So I've touched on the piece of work that we had done around plastics. Well, we're extending that work and that methodology to deliver a new report that's a broader examination of the inflationary impacts of EPR with settings in Australia, and expanding that out to not just include plastics, but to include other packaging material types. So that's a piece of work that we'll be sharing in the coming months as we move through that. A key thing that we heard was that with our just back
Carl,
back to where we were.
Yep, trying to move us on a wee bit.
No, just go back one slide because I won't dwell on this one. The key one is that we're working on an EPR fee methodology for the Australian context, and we're developing an assurance framework that looks at the trust and integrity and governance in the sector's needs of the sector. And of course, as I mentioned, SPSA. If we just flick through, please now. The standards are tightening, so really we're looking at how we support our members through our sustainable packaging guidelines, our technical expertise, both in-house and then harnessing the collective strength of our members through the material stewardship committees. Next one, please. The ARL also underpins a lot of what we do, and we also know that it's really valuable for our members. But as such, we're also looking to improve the consumer understanding and use of the ARL. So we've been leading a new campaign to improve the consumer awareness around the ARL. Next, please. As I touched on, these are some of the key areas that we're working on in the stewardship world. So really, that's just a wrap up of what I've covered. So look, I really thank everyone for their time today. My details will be made available here, and always welcome to conversation with our members and others. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carl, and sorry to hurry you along. I was hoping that we would have heaps of time for some Q&A, and it's great if you can stay on the line at the airport to help answer some questions. I'm sure they're going to come up in terms of the correspondence or similarities between Australia and the Netherlands. So what I've put in here is some slides that people can have to keep. These golden rules come from EXPRA. SPSA is a member of EXPRA. These are the golden rules that SPSA has been applying to its establishment, and which we believe are essential for good, effective stewardship. They replicate what the Netherlands has put in place. You would have heard already about the fact they're not for profit, that they're ownership by the obliged producers. They measure, they report equal treatment of all producers, information and education of consumers, transparency on money and material flows, cost coverage, cost efficiency, and fee modulation, plus, of course, the close relationship with governments and authorities. And one final slide to leave with you. This is a refresher from my observations from overseas. EPR laws put in place by national government and the regulations help shift societies from a linear to a circular system. PROs grow and change over time to suit each nation, and so they would here in Australia. And if we want a PRO to work for public purpose, like the Netherlands government does, aligned with government on targets and deliver, they can only be not-for-profit, singular, and not competing. There's not one country I visited or heard of where they have competing multiple and commercial PROs that deliver satisfactorily to targets. Likewise, nor do they deliver on eco-modulated fees. So if we want to have the kind of very sensible bonus malus system that they have in an increasing number of countries around the world, where producers are financially incentivized to do right, to have recycled content, use eco-modulation, it has to be a single not-for-profit PRO within a particular product category. Otherwise, it's a race to the bottom on price. Finally, government regulations require producers to join a scheme or to take an equivalent level of service. And you need a government regulator that approves, supervises and disciplines PROs and producers and sets that level of service with flow on into contracts with governments, sorters, processors and in the supply chain. So there are some golden rules from Helen. Now there's time for Q&A, and this is to scan to register for the next session, where we're going to hear from people in Belgium and Norway about the regulators, the PROs and the retailers and how they collaborate together. So I'll leave it there. And if you want to also see, there's a calendar for next of the following ones. They're all in close succession. We'd encourage you to go to the website to register for the other ones there as well. Now time for Q&A. And I'll put this one up on screen for people if they want to register directly now. Questions that we've got. Barry, have we got some for Paul?
There's a few there. I might start with a few for Carl, just in case his plane gets called. There's just one there. What is the timeline on assurance? Are you partnering with third parties on this? That's about the assurance program, Carl.
Yeah, thanks, Barry, and thanks. I think that's Josh. We're looking to have the framework for that developed in the first half of this calendar year, and then in the second half of the calendar year, we want to start testing that with our members and with other parties. So that's a piece of work that we're undertaking. I think part of the conversation that we need to have is, what role do third parties play in that process?
Okay. There's another one there just while Carl's there. Where can we find out more detail on the APCO SPSA agreement? That is hot off the press today, so we will plan more communications on that in the coming weeks. So it's at this moment, watch this space. We'll have more communications coming.
Yep. And there's one there for Paul, which I can see you've answered online. Thank you, Paul. You're part of the team. We really appreciate it. But perhaps if you can share, what happens if targets are not met? What are there penalties for this?
Yes, then typically we get into an infringement procedure. Then the government wants us to do better, to implement waste management plans, and with of course the result that we are going to meet the targets in the end. And they already say if you don't do that within X years, you will be fined Y. And typically they are multi-million euro fines. So yeah, we have some time to work on them, but if we fail, then the damage is quite substantial.
Good.
There's another question there, which is there's probably not I'm not sure whether it's for Carl or for Paul, or I'll have a crack at answering it. It's talking about how do you balance local PCR with imported PCR. And it was something that was addressed in the recent APCO and ACOR report. So it's from Angela. So have a look at that. But it's a really good example of where a PRO is able to eco-modulate a levy. And as in the example from the Netherlands, you can put a higher discount on, or a higher levy discount or refund, if you want to call it that, on local recycled content versus imported recycled content. And a PRO has that ability to flex it every year depending on the results it achieves. So if you keep it in-house at a regulation, the PRO can guide that. So maybe, Paul, is that something you've addressed in the Netherlands?
Yeah, until now, actually, we have been very lenient because we say there's a bonus for the application of PCR, full stop. The need for proof, this is something we haven't been asking for. And this could lead to the situation that we are now subsidizing companies who are actually not using PCR. So we know we need to step up here, and probably we're going to have a 3-step approach in our fee modulation. This would be virgin plastics or non-PCR demonstrated use would be the highest fee. Then there would be a little discount for PCR coming from outside the European border union, the Schengen area. And then a major step down, so larger discount for the material coming proven from Europe within the Schengen area that we have. But of course, this needs to be attached to something, probably to certification. There are some European standards on which some of the certification systems like Recyclas or ISCC, I believe,
Yes.
are based. And if we set the same, let's say the goal would be meeting the same standard, then I think we should be fine. However, with what I call 2-factor authentication, the converter needs to have the audit done. That's one. But 2, they need to be registered online, and the result of the audit needs to be well, at maximum X months. And what X is, I don't know. Could be 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know. But there should be a regular check, regular audit, because otherwise the companies coming from China are finding new ways of just shipping the wrong material in. So I think we need to be a little thorough here.
We have a presentation at the end of March with a presentation by CTO from France, where they have introduced a requirement and a significant bonus for companies using recycled content from within the EU border or thereabouts. And we also in April have a presentation from a plastics reprocessor. So we will hear, I'm sure, a lot more about that then. We've had meetings with Recyclas ourselves here in Australia about that program, and we have a number of companies that have registered and are compliant with ISCC Plus as part of the soft plastics program already. Other questions, Barry?
So there's probably one that builds on that, probably a little bit more specific. So ISCC Plus, I'm assuming you recognise mass balancing from chemical recycling in the Netherlands, Paul?
Yeah, this is quite a new topic for us, in such a way that we just had some implementing acts coming from the Single-Use Plastics Directive that was adopted in 2019, which now say, yes, you can apply recycled material on the mass balance way. So there would be different ways to calculate, not the free allocation methodology, not the factual one, but the one that is in between. That's the fuel use exempt methodology, which is indeed using a mass balance approach to credit the recycled material coming from chemical recycling.
Chemical recycling.
Yes.
And probably one final question for you, Paul, because we'll run out of time. But there's a lot there. For those who we don't answer, we'll try to get some responses back. But just enforcement in the Netherlands. Is the enforcement handled by Verpact or by a government agency?
No, it's by the government agency. We don't have enforcing powers. It's only for doing the declaration of packaging on the market with us. This is something where we can issue fines. The legal enforcement is done by the government, mostly being a Protestant country. We are more Catholic than the Pope, I always say. I think that, we're the toughest enforcing country in Europe, which puts us sometimes in a difficult position. On the other hand, it's fair, and that's what we're used to. So in the end, it's not a problem. We only hope that it would be the same level of enforcement in the other countries in the EU.
Very true. Okay, so I think finishing up, we thank everyone for their time. And Barry, do you want to do a quick run up and thank you?
Yeah, just a couple of key points.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for your time. I'll just be a minute. A couple of the key learnings that I heard from that, just upon reflection, was we're very fortunate to have the European countries go ahead of Australia. If I go back to Paul's original slide, they started with a covenant. We're currently sitting under a covenant mechanism. They then moved from voluntary to mandatory. They then inserted a tax, got rid of a tax. The UK has just put in a tax that's not really that effective, and then moved to full EPR. So I guess what we're advocating for jointly with APCO is government moves to this one-step approach to EPR and take all these learnings on board. The other few things that came out, the Netherlands had a few PROs and then went to one. And we're seeing the same in the UK. So you don't have a race to the bottom, and you have transparency and you have funding flow through to the supply chain. I really liked how the PRO, Verpact, worked with government on sense checking targets, balancing aspiration with capability. I think that is absolutely key for getting community trust and the recyclers' trust. The other one that really stood out to me was, I did some quick calcs, 80 to 28 euro per year per capita. In Australian dollars, that's 90 cents per capita per week. So we're talking about it's a very nominal inflationary impact, and the eco-modulation rewarding good behaviour from brands for recyclability and PCR. So one final call to action. Big thank you to the members who are in. We will be sending out scheme agreements now we have the ACCC authorisation. Scheme agreements will be out in a couple of weeks' time to officially join the scheme. For those of you who aren't in the scheme, we're going through a business planning process, much the same as most organisations would be now for budget setting. We would like to know whether organisations are planning to join. If you want to reach out to us, reach out to Oscar or I. We need to work out the commitments, our commitments to the supply chains. We need to know our membership. So we're acting very responsibly. We will not overcommit the supply chain beyond what we can afford and beyond what we can recycle, but we want to expand in line with our membership. The other piece that's good news for brands is we will move to featuring brands on in-store point of sale. So we'll have a hard close to use your logo of around April. So if you want to be part of that and have your brands featured at the collection point on the point of sale, let us know. Happy to have chats in the coming weeks. So, but big thank you to Paul and Carl, especially to Paul for the hour, and to Carl for doing all this from the airport and transit. So, but thanks everyone for your attendance.
Fabulous. Thank you, Lynn and Craig from New Zealand as well.